Oh boy, this one's going to be a bit of an awkward one to talk about. But first of all, hello everybody, and I welcome all of you back to the Chris Chan Quickie. And this time we're talking about the monthly Tugboat. Um, Now I mentioned this one's going to be a bit of a hard one to talk about, but let me just put it to you like this: is that first of all, 2025 was a pretty difficult year because it started literally with me resigning from a job in which I could tell the writing was on the wall in terms of how they were going to treat me, in terms of what they were going to do to me. So I was not going to be put in a position where I was going to be taken advantage of that in any way whatsoever. That part of my life is done, and nobody's going to be doing that to me ever again. So I literally put the foot down hard, and I struggled for about 3 whole months before I technically got back into work. It was on a 0 hours contract, so as far as I was concerned, I was still collecting welfare money, but except I was actually working. So when I say welfare, it means that I was getting paid the equivalent of if I was still on welfare, except I actually had to work for it. And even as I'm saying this right now, I can't help but feel there's a little bit of a bitterness to my tone because, well, here's the thing. Because I start a new job this coming Monday, it's currently Saturday, and the job is it's a fixed contract for only 2 months, but there's a potential for work somewhere else 2 months after this. So in spite of all the setbacks, I'm actually starting to fight back because, well, being able to have a little bit of extra money is the only way that's going to secure my future, and it would drive me to be a bit more prosperous, to be a bit more, because we all learn things through the mistakes we've made, but some people completely have lost the point in trying to work out what counts as a mistake, what counts as going wrong, and people sometimes do absolutely nothing to take a look in the mirror and to rectify the problems they have, or sometimes it's through things they either know they can do, or sometimes the problem is not being able to have control over certain things that they are never going to have control of. Then we come to Chris, who seemingly is not particularly bothered in any which way, but that might be due to slightly external factors, but factors in which Chris absolutely has control over, but we'll get to those very shortly. So, here we go. It's a fun story. Anyway, you know the expression, our ship has come in. Well, that refers to a huge one-time amount of money, which can compare to a luxury ship that can easily sink. And a tugboat is more reliable, because even though it's smaller, it's built tougher, and it's usually better on time in that sense. So I refer to my monthly income as a tugboat, whereas I would refer to, say, winning the lottery as a luxury ship. Chalk that idea up to a spot of creative thinking. Smiley face. And they described this as Chris's autistic explanation for his tugboat. So let's get to it, shall we? The monthly tugboat is Chris's euphemism for his Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI payments, which is deposited into his bank account via direct deposit on or about the 3rd of each month. SSDI is a part of a US taxpayer-supported program to support financially those whose physical injuries or mental ailments prevent them from performing even minimum wage work. Chris is known to have belonged to the system since at least 2007, before he was discovered by the internet. In the father call, Chris claimed that his disability check was a stepping stone in the right direction of him moving out. Given Chris's tendency to waste his free money on frivolous junk rather than put it towards anything that might improve his life, he was probably just telling Matt what he thought he wanted to hear. Contrary to popular belief, Chris's check is not need-based, but is awarded on eligibility alone. Most US Americans have to work a decade to qualify. Chris, on the other hand, has only been employed for 6 months, free at Wendy's, free in a pyramid scheme, However, Bob earned retirement insurance in his years at General Electric, and Social Security also lets retirees, dependent disabled children get payments, even if they have never worked for themselves, so long as they were disabled before turning 22. As long as Chris earns less than $1,220 a month and stays unmarried, to someone real at least, and out of jail, he will continue to receive his monthly tugboat unimpeded. In 2010, Chris received $809 each month, with $580 going to his parents for room, board, and to pay toward his credit card debt. After his father's death in September of 2011, Chris's tugboat increased. As of 2014, Chris was receiving approximately $1,300 each month in welfare money, of which Bob used $900 to pay for her second mortgage. Chris apparently still receives his tugboat to this day. The rationale. Challenged by a correspondent in the mailbag, Chris claimed that he is not wasting taxpayer funds because he is putting that money back into the economy and indirectly paying the tugboats of others. Chris, okay, first of all, in case you may be asking, how can Chris say that if Chris doesn't pay tax? Because the only way in which you can be paying for, for welfare and stimuli checks is if you were paying tax, because that's among things it goes to, doesn't it? According to Chris's logic, by purchasing useless commercial goods, he is paying sales tax, which the government puts directly back into the hands of the needy. This is irrefutably false. Sales taxes go towards state and local governments, but SSDI is funded by federal payroll tax, the FICA, which Chris has never contributed to for all but a few months of his life. Another thing to take into consideration is that not all of the money even stays in the US economy. Chris spends quite a bit of his tugboat on imported products. For example, Nintendo and Sony are Japanese corporations, and Chris's beloved Lego is a product of Denmark. These companies do have US bases, and a small amount of R&D occurs stateside. But at the end of the day, most of it occurs overseas. And let's not forget that the majority of Chris's toys, electronics, and other products were most likely made in some sweatshop in China. In short, a good chunk of the tugboat ends up overseas, so if anything, he's supporting the world economy. Ironically, if Chris ever bought, or did eventually buy an Xbox earlier, instead of boycotting it until 2017, the majority of money spent on it and on many of its games would be put back into the US economy, as Microsoft is headquartered in Redmond, Washington. References by Chris. Chris does not even understand which program he is even on. In many emails and posts, he mistakenly says that he receives SAI, which is a different welfare program for the poor that has far tighter restrictions and a typically lower payout. A screenshot of his bank activity from December of 2009 indicates that he received a Social Security payment on the 3rd. SAI payments are out on the 1st. The earliest known use of the term monthly tugboat was in March of 2007, in Chris's first email to his half-brother Cole Smithy. When introducing himself, Chris says, "I'm getting by living with my folks and a monthly tugboat." He does not actually explain what a monthly tugboat is supposed to be. An email to Megan from August of 2007 recounts Chris's purchase of Guitar Hero with his latest tugboat check. During the Miyamoto saga, Chris claimed that he was waiting for his tugboat in an email to Miyamoto himself, no less, to fix technical problems with his website. In Mumble Chat number 1, Chris mentions that he'll have to wait for his next tugboat to buy some new content for Ape Escape on the PSP. In Blue Spike PSN chat number 4, Chris tells Julie that he can't make it to Ohio until his next tugboat comes in. Since late 2009, Chris seemed to have mostly given up on the term tugboat, possibly because of its extensive adoption by trolls in the Mumble chats, the mailbag, and elsewhere. In the father call, He refers to it as his monthly income, while in the Jackie emails he simply says he's on Social Security, although he did refer to it once as a tugboat in mailbag number 34. The Blue Spike Skype logs quoted at the top of the page shine a light on the origin of the term, and in one of the Jackie chat logs he wrote about the reason he deserves the welfare. Oh, this is going to be pretty fun. Originally, I was given the blessing through my father on one theory of me not being able to do the basics of a job, which I have told you I disagree with fully. Yesterday, I have actually asked God the question. Because all I was coming up with was having deserved it from the trials and tribulations in my life. God responded. He told me that he blessed me because he saw me as one of the appreciative and less richer people, so he gave me that blessing through the approval. Jacqueline is quite frankly flummoxed at such a response, and I also checked him about the job situation. Why have I not been able to get a job then? Jacqueline responded with, that doesn't make sense, and she also came up with, why would God approve you to rip off the government when there are people starving and dying on the streets who genuinely need help? Chris's response was this. He told me that he felt I was not ready to tackle a job yet, but he will bless me with a job when he sees fit. I don't know. That's not my understanding of how God works. And finally, are you sure you heard him correctly? No one I know has ever heard God tell them, hey, just sit back and do nothing. I'll hand you a job and money so you can just play games all day. This is Jackie destroying Chris with sound logic. As we've already discovered, however, Chris is completely allergic to logic. Which, considering Chris's behaviours and patterns through life, that generally is not a surprise. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that is as far basically that. Now, I just would like to say before we go, if you are just so happen to be struggling for work and you feel as if like sometimes life is just incredibly difficult and unfair, well, you're not alone, pal. But you know what? If you are, there are many organizations and many people who can actually help you. If you're just struggling with financial with money, you can't seem to actually know where to go in terms of finding help. You feel that you're somehow just being cut out of the system and you're being treated however people see fit. Or if you're just a little bit anxious about where you're going in life generally, just bear in mind, guys, there are people who are willing to help, but it's give and take. It's you give people the information in terms of, well, what can they do to help you so they understand your situation, and it's about what you can take from what's being given. I know fine well there are people out there who've tried to put me on these programs for years, but I've always said, well, just as long as I get a better paid job and I can be completely contented in my work and I can just be allowed to get on with it, so much the better. To be honest, this is one of those articles, it probably deserves an even bigger explanation, because this is the sort of thing that opens a can of worms to those who actually require help. What Chris doesn't require help. Chris requires a kick up the arse, if you ask me, but that's just one man's opinion. And I have been proven wrong before, but there you go. So with all that being said and done, I'll see all of you guys again next time. Thank you.